On the morning of June 22, 1944, at exactly 6:47 a.m., as the heat already pressed down on Saipan like a damp blanket pulled tight across the skin, Corporal Jack McVer crouched behind a Browning M2 heavy machine gun wedged into a low wall of coral and sandbags along a jagged ridge overlooking the Japanese-held highlands. His eyes fixed on distant movement more than 1,600 yards away, a range his fellow Marines believed to be functionally untouchable by anything short of artillery, and certainly beyond the reach of small arms fire. McVer was 26, a farm boy from Iowa who had grown up judging distance across open fields and hedgerows, turning instinct and calculation into meat in the freezer, and now he found himself a heavy weapons specialist with no confirmed long-range kills, facing an enemy that had seeded the volcanic ridges with at least 11 sniper teams who had already taken 19 Marine lives in the last 48 hours alone, firing patiently from caves and trees that felt immune to retaliation, their confidence born from doctrine as rigid as the limestone beneath their boots. His commanding officer had placed the 84-pound M2 for area suppression, just another heavy gun meant to rake treelines with long bursts and keep enemy heads down while riflemen maneuvered, and that was what everyone expected from him, because every training manual, every lecture back at Camp Pendleton, insisted the same thing. The Browning was designed to stop trucks, punch through aircraft skins, and dominate open ground with volume of fire, not to pick off individual soldiers hiding under jungle canopy at extreme range. The manual listed an effective range of 1,800 yards against vehicles, but no one took that seriously for point targets, because machine guns were supposed to blanket areas, not behave like rifles, and yet as McVer watched muzzle flashes wink from cave mouths and branches on the far ridge, he felt doctrine begin to fray under the weight of lived reality. Sweat ran into his eyes as he adjusted the traverse mechanism, the air thick enough to taste, and beside him Sergeant Thomas Harding dragged forward another belt of .50 caliber ammunition, muttering that it was quiet out there and maybe the snipers were sleeping in, while McVer, peering through a crude 4-power scope scavenged from a damaged sniper rifle and bolted onto the receiver, replied that they were moving, that he had seen someone with a rifle at the third cave from the left about 10 minutes earlier, prompting Harding to glance at his hand-drawn range card and scoff that 1,600 yards might as well be the moon. Conventional wisdom agreed with him. Machine guns were area weapons, meant to roar until the barrel glowed, relying on probability and suppression rather than precision, but McVer had grown up understanding ballistics in a way manuals rarely conveyed, and he knew the .50 BMG left the muzzle at nearly 2,900 feet per second, knew that at 1,600 yards it would drop roughly 8 feet and take just under 2 seconds to arrive, and he had scribbled the math on the back of a cigarette pack. The night before, calculating wind drift and time of flight the same way he once calculated shots on whitetails back home, the only difference being that deer did not shoot back. When a Japanese soldier emerged from the third cave carrying what looked like a Type 99 Arisaka with a scope, moving casually as if immune to consequence, McVer felt his pulse quicken, recognizing the careful rhythm of the sniper who had killed Corporal Rodriguez 2 days earlier and Private Johnson the morning before, the same man who appeared, fired once or twice, and vanished, terrorizing the battalion from beyond perceived reach. Quietly McVer told Harding to load a belt with 1 tracer every 5th round, ignoring the puzzled look and the question about suppressive fire, because he intended to try something else. He cranked elevation into the gun, set traverse stops to limit lateral movement, and settled behind the weapon not as a gunner but as a marksman, centering his crosshairs on the enemy's chest while compensating for a light crosswind pushing smoke eastward from breakfast fires, and when he squeezed the trigger the M2 barked once, a single, sharp crack that echoed across the valley, the tracer arcing visibly through the humid air before striking the fallen log inches from the sniper, exploding wood and sending a shock wave that made the Japanese soldier freeze, then scramble backward into the cave, stunned by the impossible realization that American fire had reached him. Harding stared, half amazed, as McVer admitted it was almost enough, already adjusting mentally, because the concept was proven. The M2 could reach where the enemy felt safe if treated like a rifle rather than a hose. Word spread quickly, drawing Lieutenant Phillips to the position with binoculars and skepticism, but as he scanned the now silent ridge and listened to McVer explain the range, something shifted in his expression, because machine guns were not supposed to work this way, and yet the Japanese positions that had been active all morning were suddenly still, their occupants shaken by the collapse of their assumed sanctuary. As the sun climbed higher and the heat grew oppressive, the ridge remained quiet, and that evening McVer and Harding cleaned the barrel and refined their range cards, understanding they had not merely fired long-range shots but redefined the role of the weapon. Over the next days, McVer transformed the emplacement into something closer to a sniper's nest, building meticulous range cards for every landmark from 1,200 to 1,800 yards, stabilizing the tripod with coral and sandbags until even recoil felt muted, calculating bullet drop and wind drift using time-of-flight figures and tables borrowed from artillery manuals, mixing tracer every fourth round to observe fall of shot, while the Japanese, at first dismissing the fire as luck, began to change their behavior, sprinting instead of strolling, abandoning observation posts, and spending more time underground as Phillips began integrating long-range machine gun fire into his tactical planning, calling out bearings and distances like artillery targets and using McVer's gun to neutralize specific threats before infantry moved. Ammunition consumption plummeted compared to traditional machine gun fire, but preparation and maintenance increased, Harding becoming an expert wind reader and spotter, their partnership evolving into something closer to a sniper team than a heavy weapons crew, and the psychological impact on the enemy became visible through binoculars as bunkers multiplied, camouflage thickened, and previously deadly sniper positions fell silent. On June 26, McVer eliminated a Japanese machine gun team at roughly 1,700 yards with a single well-timed shot that struck the gunner as he leaned into position, silencing a weapon that had harassed Marines for days and cementing belief across the battalion that the impossible was now routine, prompting other crews to experiment, but success drew attention, and soon Japanese mortars and counter-sniper fire bracketed McVer's position, forcing overhead cover, decoys, and displacement, revealing the vulnerability inherent in precision fire. Accuracy demanded exposure. Ammunition shortages compounded the challenge as resupply faltered under artillery fire on the beaches, limiting McVer to 2 belts a day and forcing a calculus where every shot mattered, leading to coordination with artillery observers who could designate targets without prolonged exposure. On July 6 he achieved his longest confirmed engagement at approximately 1,850 yards, a near-limit shot that shattered a cave-side machine gun position through fragmentation and concussion rather than direct hit, demonstrating both the peak and boundary of the technique, as dispersion, wind uncertainty, and improvised optics made anything beyond inconsistent. As Japanese countermeasures improved, the contest evolved into a tense duel of patience and fieldcraft until July 8 brought crisis. No resupply, 43 rounds left, and intelligence warning of an impending counterattack as enemy movement increased boldly in daylight. McVer conserved ammunition ruthlessly, engaging only the most critical threats, dropping a machine gun crew threatening the main supply route at 1,600 yards despite the cost in precious rounds, then watching probing attacks unfold that Doctrine demanded he suppress but scarcity forbade, the psychological pressure mounting as dominance slipped away cartridge by cartridge. By mid-afternoon, a Japanese sniper team killing forward observers forced his hand, 2 shots driving them off at the cost of further depletion, until Harding proposed pooling ammunition among crews, a desperate but effective shift that Phillips approved, consolidating remaining rounds and designating McVer's team as the primary precision shooters. When the Japanese counterattack came that night with mortars and probing infantry, McVer responded not with roaring bursts but with deliberate single shots, coordinated with other crews, neutralizing key machine guns, snipers, and observers until the attack collapsed under surgical fire, consuming more than half his allocation but preserving the perimeter. The Japanese resistance finally crumbled on July 15, white flags appearing cautiously in cave mouths as weeks of precision fire shattered confidence and will, and though fresh ammunition had arrived days earlier, the psychological damage was irreversible. As Marines cleared the ridges, they found improvised graves and shattered cave mouths bearing the scars of .50 caliber impacts, and Harding's after-action tally showed roughly 430 rounds fired for 17 confirmed kills and dozens more casualties from near misses and fragmentation, an effectiveness ratio unheard of in traditional machine gun doctrine, yet numbers failed to capture the true impact. An entire battalion altered its behavior, abandoned positions, and squandered resources because one crew refused to accept doctrinal limits. Phillips submitted a detailed report recommending dissemination of the technique, and Japanese prisoners later admitted through interpreters that the big gun that shoots one bullet had driven them from positions they once considered invulnerable. As McClure cleaned his M2 for the last time on Saipan, removing the improvised scope and returning it to standard configuration for the next campaign, he reflected that the success had come not from superior equipment but from understanding what already existed, from questioning assumptions and treating weapons as systems governed by physics rather than paragraphs in manuals. And as the captured ridges fell quiet under the evening sun, the lesson was clear: tactical advantage often belongs to those willing to see beyond doctrine and discover what their tools can truly do under pressure.